All right, Hammer and Axe, Ep.2. I'm here with my good friend Connor. Connor, it's great to have you up here. We met back in 2018. You were living with your grandma. You were working for your church. You just had a surgery, and you were starting your business, Shoe Sense. You were just sort of jogging around, figuring out what you wanted to do, but you still wanted to be a runner. Flash forward to now, you still want to be a runner. Can you talk to me a little bit about what your relationship with running is compared to that time, and sort of like some of the trials you went through to get here?
Yeah, I think it's something that I've always wanted to do, and I've loved running, and I've loved being a part of a team. And so, yeah, whether I was winning national championships at CU and then having surgery and just knowing that there was more potential. And I think every runner can talk about how potential is like the worst and best thing because you never know what your full potential is. And so you're constantly chasing that potential. And that's what I've felt like I've done is I feel like I've always got more to give and have those breakout races, but then the consistency has been the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah, so you ran well on the track. I mean, when you came back, you were a steeplechaser in college. You sort of were like, I'm done with the steeplechase because you had a labrum surgery, and I'm not a physical therapist or anything, but I know that those events probably, a labrum surgery,
They don't mix.
yeah, don't go well with the steeple. So you sort of moved to the 5K and 10K, and you finished sixth place at the 2019 USA Championships. And that was what sort of felt like the end of your track career. Even though you ran so well, what I really want to understand is, when did you decide I should run a marathon, and what was that, the process of that decision?
Yeah, eventually every track person realizes the track beats you up so bad. And I just kept getting beat up. Like my Achilles would blow out, my foot would blow out, like my calves. And so just doing circles all the time really fast would just kill me. And so that's where I realized I couldn't do it. After I had the Achilles surgery on my Hagelin's deformity and I'd torn my Achilles, I was like, I don't think the track is where I want to be. And so that really helped kind of accelerate me to be slower, more consistent, and like just have more road miles instead of track miles. And so 2020, I thought I could make the trials and run well in the 10K, and then it got pushed back to 2021. And so then that sucked. And so by that point, I was like, yeah, there's just no point in continuing to chase the track dream. And I think I have something in the half marathon and the marathon and see what I can do.
What qualities in college did you notice that are good qualities for a future marathoner? So if you're a guy in the NCAA and you're like, I'm good at the track, but I know there's some more potential somewhere else, what qualities do you feel like you had and other runners should look for when they're in college or even high school that they could be a great marathoner in the future?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and CU, of course, had 18-mile long runs at Gold Hill or Magnolia at 6-minute pace. So it's like you were really comfortable running long, sustained efforts, and then you could handle the pounding, you could handle 100-plus mile weeks. And so somebody that loves distance running and just the miles, that's something that you really have a good benefit of. And then noticing that your threshold, you can hold it for a really long time. Like some people are super fast, more VO2 focused. I knew I could just hold 5.0s to 450s for a ton of reps. And so that kind of helped make it easier to run a marathon. And you just have to be able to sustain that for 26 miles.
Got it. So when I look at marathon training, and I sort of like compare it to what I do, for me, it's the physical thing that I'm terrified of the marathon. I can't do long runs successfully. At the end of, 6 to 8 miles, you and Reed start to pull away from me in training. My legs just feel absolutely destroyed. The mental barrier, which I feel like is probably, maybe more of a challenge for guys like you and Reed for the marathon, that doesn't seem as crazy to me. Like, I know I can push myself in races. I know like I'm good at, maximizing my effort wherever I need it to be, whether it's, a 1500 or a 5K, 10K on the track. So for you, were you more worried about, okay, mentally, this is such a jump. I've only raced a 10K or I've only raced a half, and now I have to do, double that. Or were you more worried before your first marathon, oh man, I have to run 26 miles. My legs are just going to be destroyed by the end. So talk to me about just, psychologically, what were you thinking?
Yeah, the mental side, I think, is the biggest challenge because you have to lock in and be present for for a half marathon for an hour or 2 hours for like the marathon. And so I think mentally, how do you ride the ups and the downs? Because inevitably you're going to have that. I remember my first, like I did Falmouth race, and I was like, that was kind of my first road race. And like, it was so hard because people were just making surges and you were going uphill and downhill. And like, how do you find a rhythm where I had just come from the track, just gotten sixth, and I just ripped around 70-second laps. I mean, you knew that you could just knock out one lap after another, but the road, I could not like figure out the pacing of where it's like, oh, 1 mile is 4:30 down a hill, and then the next one's 5:10 up the hill. So it's like, how do you stay consistent and not get too caught up in the pace, not get too caught up in the just the challenges and the pushes and the surges and the hills and like just all the different factors that are not so standard like you would in a track. So that was really hard.
Got it. You made your marathon debut in Chicago. You ran 2 hours and 15 minutes. And then you followed that up with a 12th place finish, which I personally think is the best race of your life.
It was.
At the Olympic trials, you were ranked, I think, like in the 70s.
78 or something like that.
And you finished 12th. And I remember watching it and just watching you move up, and you and Reed ran such an awesome race together. And it was really, really inspiring. So you kind of, were off to a really good start in your marathon career.
Yeah.
The last two marathons, as you said to me in the car, not your words, I sucked. What do you feel like you got right in the first two? And what do you think like hasn't quite gone your way recently?
For sure. I think the first two were kind of gimmies because like you don't know what you don't know. And so you go out and run a marathon. You're happy. Chicago was great. We really went conservatively and knew that we needed to get the trials qualifier. So I had one shot and that was it. So I was able to run a little bit slower than I normally would have if I had probably gone out like 2:13 pace or something like that. So just being smart, being patient with that one. And then the trials, like it was like house money. Like there's nobody expected me to do anything. Like I knew what I could do. I knew I'd been training with Reed. I knew I was fit. And so I was confident going in, but like nobody else knew. And so there was no expectation. And so I think once you finish 12th, then this expectation comes on you and you feel I have to perform or I have to go run 2:10 or I have to go run these things. And that has just been pressure that I don't need and it hasn't really helped. And so I think the more you think about it, the more you kind of get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm going to feel 10K left. It's going to be where the race starts. Like that kind of gets in your head a little bit. So CIM, I got there and I just fell apart. And then grandma's, I strained a calf trying to get there and then had a baby that same day I was supposed to race the race. So it's like life sometimes happens. And I think if you look at most marathoners, there's going to be so many ups and then there's going to be a ton more downs.
The last 2 years, training has been pretty similar for me. And I think it's been pretty similar for you. I mean, we obviously do different things, but we have the same coach and, we're at practice at the same time. But for me, mentally, I've changed so much about how I approach racing, how I look at training, how I, show up with gratitude when I race. And it really hasn't been the training that I feel like moved the needle for me. It's been what's gone on between my ears. And do you feel like you've done similar training the last few years? And do you feel like there's been a mental barrier that's held you back? Because like I said, like I see you in practice all the time. You're running just as fast, if not faster. Do you feel like that's something that you're aware of? Or is that like just something that, you really think it is maybe just a physical thing?
For sure. No, there's definitely a mental piece to it. And I think I've struggled with that as an athlete for a lot of time. I think even at CU, we'd win national championships and you'd be like, oh, well, you weren't high enough or you didn't like finish well or whatever. And so there's those voices in your head that tell you that you're not enough or that you aren't going to make it or you're going to blow up and embarrass yourself or whatever. Like there's so many different things that go through your head. And I think, so I think you struggle with that. And so working on practicing being present in the moment and like not projecting into the future and just I feel like I've always looked to what the next thing is and sometimes that takes away from the gratitude of what is right now and I think that's something that I've really been working on and I don't think I'll ever get there but I think it's something that if you're being present you're being grateful and like things in life kind of teach you that whether you want to or not you have to be present and be grateful for what you have and not try to get to the next thing or prove to anybody that you're enough. And I think coming off the trials, I felt like I had to prove that I was a top 10 guy in the US and that just clearly doesn't work.
I got some really practical but awesome advice from Lawrence once. And what he told me was, don't think too far ahead of when you're in the race. Don't think too far ahead. That's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, yeah, some of my worst races, I've been like, I can't believe I have 2 miles to go.
Yep.
And things just start to fall
Yeah,
off.
that's when you go downhill.
That's especially true in the marathon. And you just mentioned it a little bit, but like being present, knowing that you're going to have ebbs and flows of feeling good for a 5K, feeling really bad for a 5K, but not sort of reacting to either of those, because if you're feeling really, really good, the worst thing you can do is be like, all right,
Let's go.
Yeah, let's turn up the
great.
gas. And the worst thing you can do is if you're feeling bad for a stretch early in the race is to like, I'm going to drop back. What do you do? Like, what is sort of the mental conversation you're having when you're, I don't know, 12 miles into the marathon? You're not even halfway there yet. And you're like, this kind of hurts. What are you saying to yourself? What cues are you sort of giving to yourself there? And like, what are the different conversations you're having at different phases of the marathon?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the biggest thing is it changes throughout the marathon, but I think what you want to make sure is that you're being present in the moment. But I think when I get to halfway, then like you're kind of checking in with your body and saying, okay, how do I feel? And I think somebody told me, and Lawrence was like aware, but not attached. And I think that's the biggest thing is you can be aware of everything. Your legs are hurting, your legs feel great, but don't attach to that feeling. And then oftentimes you put an emotion to it and then that spirals you down to, oh, it's good or bad. It's just a feeling and it's just an awareness of what's going on. And when I'm doing well and I'm running well, it's like, I just am aware and then you kind of let it go and kind of float it on. But if I'm attached to it, especially when it's bad, that's where I'm like, oh, you project into the future of like, oh, it's going to be this way forever. I'm going to keep getting worse. And then that's where you really start falling off. And so I think that's where I need to work on. And I've had great races where I didn't feel that way.
You coach some people and you coach some marathoners. What practical advice do you give them when they're 18 miles into the race? Like, what are you saying, like before their big race, like, hey, if it hurts, they say like, 20 miles is halfway in the marathon. Are you telling them, hey, like this is the conversation you need to have with yourself then? Or is it more of like, these are the splits you need to hit. And then I know that you'll be good at 20 miles. What are you telling the people you coach and just sort of, advice for the 3 to 4 hour marathon crew?
Yeah. I think the best advice I got was from Josh Cox before the trials. And he said, patience. Like if you are patient early on, because it's going to almost feel too easy. Like it's going to feel like the pace is way too easy. You're going to get tempted to run faster. And that's where you start getting greedy. And then you get to 20 miles and you've spent all your matches and you got nothing left for that last 10K. So how do you be patient? And like Josh was like, get to halfway and then should you make a move? No, wait. And then it's like, get to 20 miles. Should you make a move? Nope. Like, wait. And so it's like each one of those things, anytime you think you should push, just wait and just let it ride, let the ebbs and the flows, don't get attached to it. But there's going to be good times where you feel great. And then there's going to be times where it sucks, but that time where it sucks will pass and like, you'll continue to get better. But like Reed talked about as well, like splitting every 5K, that really helped with like getting bigger chunks instead of having the whole thing or 1 mile at a time. How do you make it into small manageable chunks and like just focus on one thing per chunk and then kind of get better as you go?
Yeah, I like that. I think that is really good advice, is looking, for you guys every 15 minutes at a split instead of like a beep going off on your watch every 5 minutes or so. Like mentally, I feel like that would be a barrier for me. I actually just I don't even have mile splits in my watch anymore when I train or do anything. It's like, I just need to zone out, feel out what I'm doing, respond to an effort and focus on that. Do you still believe that your best marathon is ahead of you? Is that something that you feel like is something you're actively pursuing? And if so, what do you think needs to change? Is it training?
Yeah, so I definitely think I have a 2:10 or under marathon in me. I may be crazy, but who knows? We'll find out. And there's only one way to find out is to go after it and go for it. And I think the training that I've been doing is indicative of that. But I think the biggest thing is like the mental side and like just really focusing on being grateful at the start line. There's been races at like CIM. I felt like I had to be the top guy or I had to push or I had to be enough. And just knowing that you are enough and that you don't have to prove anything to anyone except for yourself and just be excited to go out there and push yourself to the limit and let everything else fade away.
How do you and Joan work together on marathon training? I know for Reed's marathons, him and Joan will sit together, plan out 12 weeks. You know, these are the workouts we want to do. These are the long runs. These are the tweaks. Do you have a similar relationship and similar sort of philosophy to doing that? Or are you sort of like hands off? I trust you, write my training. I'll show up. You tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Yeah, so normally we'll kind of sit down at the beginning of the season and make a plan, and then inevitably it always changes. And so I think that's the thing, is being able to be flexible, communicate with Joan and understand what I need and like how I need to change. And then we also went into the physiology lab. Like that was really helpful to see how my lactic levels change, and mine's very different than Reed's. Like Reed is a aerobic monster. I'm more of a kind of an anaerobic monster where it's like I don't make lactic, but when I do, I make it really quickly and I can't clear it very fast. So I need to work on that like lactic 2, like LT2, and to go a little bit faster so that way I can sustain the slower paces, but for longer. And so looking at that has been really helpful to kind of physiology, mental training, and then like what has worked all together.
Can you explain that a little bit? Can you go into detail a little bit more with that? What's a workout that would do well for Reed that you would, you know, maybe change and tweak that would be better for your profile as an athlete?
Yeah. So one of the things that we changed and I thought really worked well going into CIM was we do float rest. So typically if you're doing threshold, it's like, okay, today I did 8 by mile and I was like 5:10 to 5:05, but it was 60 seconds, like at 8-minute pace. I was just shuffling. But what we did is we put in like 10 by 800 meter on at like below marathon pace, and then 800 meter just above. And so you almost averaged out marathon pace, but you were able to float back and forth. So you got the recovery, kind of active recovery, instead of really slow, you were still kind of running that same pace. And so I felt that really, really helped kind of make sure that I could recover quickly at a slower pace, but then like get back to the faster pace again. So playing with that LT2, but then not going back down to really slow, really kind of trying to keep that recovery faster.
Gotcha. That's cool. Yeah, I know. I think it's interesting because what you guys do a lot of stuff together, but there are some minor tweaks. And so I think it's always fun to just see like why you're doing that. And you are like, you're an engineer. So I feel like, you know, that's your brain works a little bit more that way, where you're like, I want to know why I'm running this pace because the data backs it up.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
I feel like getting you in the lab was really probably important for you versus, you know, I'm like a free spirit with my running. Like I'm like, you know, we'll run mile repeats today. I'll run between 4:30 and 5 minutes, whatever I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And you know, that's how I like to train. But, you know, for someone like you, like you're like, I can see the data. I see what works for me. I see what I need to do for this marathon build, and that will give me confidence.
For sure. And I know it's like, that's good in training, awful in racing. Because I think if you're analyzing during the race, you're making a mistake. And so I was talking to one of my athletes that's running New York. I'm like, have a plan before the race. So that way, when you're in the race, you don't think, like you're just executing on your plan. Because anytime you have a moment to think or a choice, your brain is going to doubt you, question it, second guess it. And then you're probably going to pick the easier route, rather than if you just know, okay, at 5K, I'm going to do this, 20K, I'm going to do this. Like just plan it out. So that way you have less thoughts and more just action that's not even going through your brain.
You're balancing a lot. For most runners don't do as much as you do while trying to balance a running career. You have multiple jobs. You now have a baby. You don't have a pro contract, so you're not getting paid to do this. You're still chasing a sport that takes a lot out of you. It's a reality like most runners don't see. I think especially now it feels like it's a career, or you're just like, I'm done. Why are you still doing this? Like what keeps you showing up?
Yeah, it's a great question. Most of the guys on the team at practice just joke that I just don't want to get a real job, which is pretty much half true, especially with an engineering degree. You're like, yeah, I could be making good money. I could be living plush. And on the bad days, my wife will remind me of that. And she's like, you could be having a good job and I could be a stay-at-home mom. Yeah. And so I think the challenge for me is like, running has given me so much, and it's gotten me scholarships and friends and opportunities and jobs and businesses and like so many things I wouldn't have ever guessed. And so I think for me, I don't know anything else. And I think it's almost that unknown and scary, because I feel like I'm great at one thing. Like I'm a great runner and I know that I'm good at it. It's almost that fear of like, well, what if I'm not good at work or business or whatever the next endeavor is. If I'm not a good dad, if I'm not a good husband, like all those things are the fear of failure. And so I think I struggle with that sometimes, being like, this is the one good thing that I know I'm at least good to great at. And so some of that might be part of it, but I think the potential and the thought of knowing that, like, I love going to practice and seeing you guys every day. And I think that's like a big aspect of it, is having that community, and then knowing that like there is that PR out there that you just cannot not think about, and you can't get out of your head until you know you did everything, and then you can walk away saying that you did everything you could, and then the rest of life will always be there.
Yeah, retiring and sort of like moving on from the sport seems to be really hard for people.
Yeah.
It seems like as much as you try to separate running and who you are as a person, you're right. We have been really successful at this from a very young age. We anchor a lot of our relationships, and, you know, even just like time in our day is spent thinking about running. And so to cold turkey stop is hard for a lot of distance runners. Steve Magnus has a great book on this, Win the Inside Game. And he talks about, you know, how hard it was for him to like sort of step away from running. But what I do think is cool is distance runners, especially, have so many traits that they learn through running that will translate so well into whatever they want to do next. And I remember someone telling me that, like a mentor telling me that, they were like, do not like go all in on your running now. Like, this is the last chance you're going to get. You can't come back to a running career when you're 40. But you know, you can, learn so much from what you're doing. And, you know, that's really, really important. I also think like a lot of people are just unable to stop. Like, you know, that's like, we talk, you know, a lot about just, okay, like you're not making money or all these different things. But some people, it's like, it's just your routine of your life for the last decade. Like, you wake up and the first thing you do is you go for a distance run.
Yeah.
And I always think about that. I'm like, that is something I'll still do when I'm done competing. Like, I'm going to start my day with a run. And I think like some people don't even acknowledge that. It's like really like your day is sort of structured around when you're training. I want to like get deeper on some of this. You've been open to me about how stressful this is. What right now is the most stressful aspect? Is it the money side of things? Is it family? Is it a mix of both? What do you think is the hardest thing to balance with your running?
Yeah, I think every runner knows it's time, and there's no way to avoid time. And so I think the biggest thing is you want to make sure that you're spending time with your family and your newborn baby and like your wife who's been with the baby all day. And so I think that's been, I feel, I guess guilty is the best word, is like you feel guilty because running is a very selfish sport, and like you have to take that time to do it. It's like I go for my run in the morning. First thing I do, come home, I'm like, hey babe, like, hi baby, hi dog, like I gotta go lift and I gotta go run again. And so it's like literally like that is my day every day now. It's like I went to run, to work, to say hi, to lift, to run, to work some more on my second or third job. So I think you prioritize things, and you have to focus on making sure that during the build of a marathon, like that's a priority, but then during the off season, that's when you go to Hawaii or you go and do some things, and things like where you prioritize them, and running takes the back seat. Because I think if running always takes the front seat, then your relationships, your finances all suffer. And so you have to put in perspective of like, this is important, but it's not everything. And so how do I prioritize family, faith, all those things outside of this when I'm not in that crazy 100+ mile week build?
I had my first kid in 2023. I had probably the worst year of my running career that year. But when Ella was born, it was, and we've talked about this off camera, it was a very spiritual experience for me. I don't like to throw that word around because people throw it around all the time, and I feel like it can get overused, but it was truly like, you know, when I looked at my daughter, I had unconditional love beyond anything I could ever explain, outside of having a kid. Like that was it. And my relationship with running changed as soon as that happened. Do you think that has happened with you? I know you guys had quite a different birth experience than, I did. Ours was not as traumatic, very calm. You can explain to everyone in a second what I mean by that. But do you feel like your relationship with running has changed because of your child?
Yeah, I think it has. I think you just have a perspective on life. I think it gives you a bigger perspective of like how selfish you are. And it's so bad because it's like you get angry at this little baby for waking you up at like 2 a.m. You're like, you go back to sleep. I need to go back to sleep because I want to go for a run. And so it's like, it's so selfish and so like indulgent of like, okay, whatever I need and what's best for me is what's the thing that's going to happen. And so you look at this little baby that has no care, that you're a runner, has no idea that like you want to get a good night's sleep. It just needs food and a diaper. And you're like, that's what matters. And so how do you become present with what you are and what you're doing right now and not feel like you're missing out on the proper sleep or the proper training? And so I've felt like I've become less analytical and maybe anal about like how my training has to be perfect and my sleep has to be perfect and everything has to be just so, and just saying, get today done and whatever today gives you, whether it's a great run and bad sleep or whatever, take it as it is. And then just keep putting decent days together. And over a month or 2 months or 3 months, it just continues to change and get better.
Yeah, the big shift for me was looking at running as a gift.
Yeah.
Especially with kids, like it's weird, like you were saying, like someone once said to me is he said, you don't realize how selfish you are until you have kids, and it was like, that was like
That's so
very true
true.
for me. But now I look at running as a gift. Like I'm like, I get to go spend time with my best friends, train hard for something I care deeply about. It's just a gift. It's just a gift.
Yep.
And that's been a big, big mental shift for me that I think has really helped my running. And you're right. Like I don't stress about having the perfect lift or having the perfect training run. Or, having the perfect diet. I mean, half the time I'm eating just what my kid's eating, like, scraps of their food and stuff. And it's like, okay, like maybe I could be better about this stuff, but I'm not going to let this stuff override how much I love my child and how much I love my running career. And those things are, going to just be put in their proper place. And, that's been a big motivational shift for me. And, I think like a lot of people experience something similar to that. I want to talk a lot. This is what I want to spend the majority of the conversation on, about Tinman Elite, because I think a lot of people probably have questions about everything that went down in the last few years. And we've been a part of Tinman since the beginning. So I think it's two guys to have a good conversation about this. And you are still training with Tinman Elite and I'm not. So I think it'll be good to, hash some things out and talk. So from your perspective, what happened to Tinman Elite in 2024?
We were up for contract negotiation. So, I mean, like simple terms is like, okay, we had the original deal, which was okay, not great. I mean, it's like we're a new team, something new, something different. And so I think we were undervalued and like we wanted to make sure that the next contract was different and better and supported mainly like the coaches, and like Joan and Mark had moved and left their whole life and comfy retirement home in Virginia. And they're like, hey, we're going to come drop everything and move out to Boulder for you guys. And so I felt a really, really heavy responsibility as the finance guy and the whatever marketing. I did so many different things with Tinman just to kind of keep everything afloat. I wanted to make sure that they were taken care of and that every single athlete got the best deal that they could. And so I guess, I don't know, what do you think? We quickly realized that might not be the case, that like everybody stays unified under one banner. And so
Explain that a little bit more.
So I think the challenge was it's like, okay, if a company has a contract with you, they have pretty big power over each individual athlete. Does that make sense? So it's like there's the team entity, but if like you want to be a part of this team, you have to sign with this company. So it kind of eliminates some of your choices for like who you want to go with, how much you're worth, and like you look at like with Football Reference, it's like Shaquan Barkley. It's like, or like he went and like was it with the Giants, and then he went and tested the free market, and then the Eagles were like, "Hey, we'll pay you a ton of money," and so the Giants were like, "We can't afford that. We can't match that. You have to take that." And so I think Yeah, I think that was kind of the hardest part. Is like we opened everybody up, we tried to figure out what we could do, and then Adidas wouldn't pay certain people. Other people got better offers from different companies. And then you're like, okay, how do we do this? Do we piece it together off of individuals that have no unified banner? Or do we go in a different direction, like with just the marathon team with Adidas? And that seems to be what Adidas wants to fund and what they're excited about going into 2028. And that's where they're putting their money towards. So that was kind of how it very high level worked out, is like certain people got paid, certain people didn't get the offers that they deserved. And it's like, we couldn't conserve everything together, but I wanted to make sure that everybody got the most out of what they could. Like you said, you don't get contracts all the time. You don't get paid, and if you can get paid, I want you to get paid, because like that's your family, that's your livelihood. And like, you have every right to do that. And so I think, how do we take care of the most people while understanding that it's never going to be perfect?
It was a weird sort of off season
Oh,
with
yeah, it was
all
awful.
these
It was
conversations
awful.
happening. And I think sometimes, like I'm like a little bit removed from it now, but when you fly too close to the sun, and by what I mean by that is like when we were doing everything with Tinman, we were selling out of
Oh yeah,
merchandise, we
it
were
was.
making shoes, we were doing all the media stuff that no one was doing.
Yeah.
I think you have this perception of value that is probably way higher than what people want to pay you for.
Yeah.
And I understand that now a little bit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I look at our sport and I go, no one is doing what we were doing and what even like remotely close to as cool as what we were doing. And it was a bummer that we weren't rewarded for that as
Yeah.
we all felt like we should have been.
Yeah. That's exactly a good
And
way
like
to
I
put it.
said, I'm trying to play devil's advocate and see both sides of the perspective, both sides of the story here. But yeah, and the other thing I wanted to talk about was what was tough about, what ultimately ended up happening is Connor and Reed, you guys decided to stay with Tinman Elite, pursue the marathon, and me and Sam, Joey, decided to sign with individual companies and sort of basically just do our own thing.
Mm-hmm.
What was tough about that was we built this all together. And so it was like the least happy way it could have ended for all of us. And, because for you guys, it's like, you signed a new deal. That financial aspect, that's great. All, you can still keep doing what you're doing. You can still have the running camp, all those things, but you don't get to do it alongside, guys that were in your wedding.
Yeah.
And from us, it was like, we have to say bye to all the hard work over the years that we put in, and sort of just cold turkey, sort of like, okay, we're done here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really tough. In hindsight, do you think that split was a good decision?
I think it's too early to tell. I think the hardest part is, like you said, it was the wildest ride of just like being like on the cutting edge of everything, and like you said, selling out, doing all these things. And I truly feel like, I know this sounds kind of conceited, but like we changed the way running is done. Like you look at all these marathons, you look at all these races, like the community aspect, the media aspect, every team has a camera guy, like it has a Max out there filming them. And so I think the impact is hard to quantify, like you said. And so I think, how do you know what your influence was until like you look back on it in like 10 years? And so I think, I don't know if we made the right decision. In my thought process is people first and like people centered. And so I'm willing to sacrifice for myself and everyone else, like what makes sense for the greater good of as many people. And I think that's sometimes good and sometimes bad. Like if you ask my wife, she's pissed because I want to please everyone. It's like, I want to please my mom, my dad, like you. It's like, who comes first? And so I think that becomes a challenge. When you please everyone is kind of left with like a little bit of a bitter taste in their mouth, because nobody got what they actually wanted, but nobody was willing to pay for actually what we needed to make it happen. So I think it was a good decision for Mark and Joan for sure, because they were able to stay out here and like they were able to like make a living and like get paid like a professional coach. I think for the team and Tinman as a brand, it has suffered, I guess. I mean, I guess that's the best way to put it. It's like there's a unique force that is Sam Parsons and you, like doing and being behind the scenes, coming up with all these crazy ideas. And that will never be the case again. And I think that is to the detriment of Tinman. And I think that's a detriment to the sport of running. And I think that makes me really sad that it will never be the same. And does it have to be? And does it need to be forever? And I think that's where I think as an adult, I've learned that nothing is permanent. I think as a 26-year-old, when you first started, you're like, this is going to last forever. We're going to be best friends. We're going to be like doing this till we're 40. And then you realize the reality and the harsh reality of business and finance and lives and kids and having to take care of your family. And I think that just separates things and things splinter, and you're no longer all living at Bighorn and you have kids and you have a mortgage, and it's like things change and things are harder. But I don't think Tinman is in a good spot right now, but I think we would like to get to a better spot. But unfortunately, the thing that gets you to a better spot is always money and talent. So it's like, can we find talented runners that are interested in the marathon, that are willing to move out to Boulder and kind of redo that? And are we still passionate about doing community events, doing the group runs, doing the camps? That takes effort, and it's time away from your family. It's time away from like your training. And so when we were 20-year-olds, yeah, I want to do that. I love that. And like, that was some of the best memories. But now that we've like changed, are we still willing to put in that effort? Or do we need to find a new crop of young 20-something-year-olds that are willing to go out there and do what we did to then carry on that tradition? So that's a long answer to that really is a non-answer, but that's kind of my thought process. How about you? What's your thoughts?
Look at these guys, just politics up here, just not trying to be too controversial.
Drew will say it. Let's hear what Drew has to say. Let's hear the real truth.
The
unfiltered truth.
I wrote an essay on this, so it's easy for me to easy for me to reflect now. When in 2019, 2020, COVID even, when we were like, we had 300 people show up to a community run in the middle of nowhere, Des Moines, Iowa, where decked out in Tinman gear. When you literally looked in the stands and there was people in Tinman gear. When we were selling, I don't want to give too many details, lots of money worth of Tinman gear.
An hour.
In drops that lasted 3 minutes because people would, log in and, like kids would dip out of class to buy hoodies and t-shirts. When that was happening, it felt like the most right and perfect thing I could have ever been doing with my career. And then as soon as I felt like it became about the money, about the business, and not about what we originally started, as my wife always says, you should only do something if it's true, good, and beautiful.
Oh, wow. I like that.
It wasn't about that anymore. I think the best thing I could have done was stop doing it instead of pretending that it was still something I deeply cared about. And so, and that slowly changed. And I want to be careful here because it changed for good reasons as well. Like, I got married to the love of my life and I have 2 beautiful children. And like, I compare it to that now and I'm like, okay, it's not even close. Way rather be doing that. And, I had less time to, stay up late making YouTube videos and, sell, shipping merch and, living with 5 other dudes in a house. Like, you just don't do that stuff anymore. And that was a good change. But like I said, I had to come back to the reality that like, I should be doing this because it's good. Yeah. And I felt like that changed. So that's my answer on that. I want you to make the pitch and the case for Tinman Elite as a marathon focused team and what that looks like. So we sort of talked a little bit about what happened. Now let's look to the future, the next few years. What does a good Tinman Elite marathon team look like to you? Yeah.
I mean, we kind of talked about it with Adidas and like our agent, Josh, and it's like, we want to have a guy or woman at the 2028 trials, like competing for a spot on the team. I mean, I think that would be the true goal of like, okay, let's build a team of guys that want to go after and chase the dream of the Olympics. And so I think that's kind of the goal, is like to find people that are willing to bet on themselves. I think that's the hardest part. It's harder to find nowadays. I don't know why, but I feel like we all moved out here because we believed in ourselves and we all knew that we could get better, and we could get better because we had you and Reed and Sam and all those guys that we could train with, because that was going to be who we wanted to be with. And that's who we wanted to see succeed more almost than myself. Like I wanted to see you succeed. And I was so proud of watching you race well, but then that gave me confidence because I trained with you every day. And so that's kind of what I want to build. Is there's a couple good marathon teams, but I think we could be one of the best American marathon teams, but that takes money and time and effort. And so that's kind of the balance of like, okay, you kind of have to bet on yourself to come out here. And then as you continue to perform and improve, then the money and the kind of contracts or whatever kind of come. And so, but you want somebody that's willing to bet on themselves and like drop everything, move out to Boulder, believe that like training with Reed, Joan is a great coach, and just going for it. Like you have to just be willing to go for it and like believe that you can go to that next level, even if you've kind of been overlooked. I think it's hard because you look at all these top tier athletes. Yeah, those are guys that have already done it. We're looking for the people that are just right below that, so that can then make that move up to there.
Yeah, that was my next question, is give me a profile of like the type of athlete that you see being successful at Tinman Elite. Men and women.
Yeah. So I think it's somebody that's like kind of done with the track. I think, I mean, a lot of people love the track and a lot of people want to do that, but I think the goal is like the roads are, in my opinion, better than the track. Like they put you up in a hotel, they like pay for your travel, like they want you to be there, they're excited for you. There's no heat that you have to fight to get in, like the fast heat. Like every race is the fast race. So it's like that's something that I think you can really make a good living doing and enjoy it. Like you get to see beautiful states and amazing races that have been there for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And so I think the road is a really fun place to be. And so, yeah, I think you just want to be excited about going to the roads. So you're maybe a year or two out of college figuring things out. But like if you're in that 215 range, like I was, it's like, okay, you know that you can move up to that 210 and like getting towards that kind of, that's the new barrier. I feel like 210 is kind of like the standard of like, okay, are you a competitive runner or are you kind of just not quite there yet? 210 seems to be kind of the mark. So I think that's the goal, is to have as many people that we can at 210. And then for the women, like we would love to have good women that like just love running on the roads. I think there's underrepresentation of women, especially in road running, because you look at some of these races and like the prize purse goes down to 6 people. They have 5 people in the race. Or like there's 4 people in the race. You're like, well, like how can you not get more women that are excited, betting on themselves, and like want to pursue this thing of running? And I don't know why there's not more emphasis. And so I would love to be the place where you can come train, have a female coach that understands the nuances of females, and then have a great experience as well in Boulder.
And what are your roles, you, Reed, Mark, and Joan, on building out this team? Like, what does that look like? Who's recruiting? Does like, how, just give me like how, like, what are the day-to-day operations for Tinman Elite in terms of media and, gear, all that sort of stuff? What does it look like now? Because I don't know anymore. I'm a free man.
Yeah, you're a free man. Our gear is not sitting in your basement anymore.
That's nice.
So like Joan is the head coach, and she does an absolute great job, almost to her detriment, where she worries about every little aspect, and she loves to really, really dive in deep. She has no ego, and she has no qualms to ask the best in the world and learn. And I think that's something that she does a fantastic job of, admitting that she doesn't know everything and constantly trying to find how to become a better coach, a better person, and like cares about you as a person. So I would say that was the biggest difference, is like from what we have had in the past, like she really does care about me as a person before anything about running at all. So I think that really helps to have that piece there. And then Mark, he does the recruiting. So I feel bad for him because he puts in the work. He knows how to find the diamonds in the rough, but in the end of the day, it comes down to money and contracts and agents, and like it gets complicated. But the people that reach out to him have a fantastic experience. He'll tell you honest and open, and he'll get you involved. And then Reed is, I would say, like the figurehead, and he's kind of like the guy that's done it and knows how to do it and like can mentor you along the way. And I think that's something that, like, the reason why I ran so well in my second ever marathon was I had Reed. Like, he told me the secrets, he helped me, he guided me, he was very kind in doing that. And I don't know of a lot of teammates that would do that. And so he's willing to help that next generation do what he's done. I mean, he was whatever, like what, 2-time All-American, or he was a 52 miler. And I mean, like, not a great runner, but like, he's put in the work, he's been consistent. And so he does the media stuff, a little bit of design and product stuff, but mostly just a great teammate. And then I do the rest. Whether it's like a warehouse next to my house out in Dacono, and I just pack things in the warehouse, or finance stuff, or whatever needs to get done, I just try to get done. So yeah, it's kind of a bare bones operation compared to what we used to have, where like each member of the team had a job, and like that's what we would love to have moving forward. Is like, who's interested in doing community events, who's interested in doing run groups or camps or whatever. Like, the next 20-year-old that is excited about it and like has the flexibility and the freedom, that would be fantastic. Is like, step into a role, leave yourself with a resume and not just a big gap of like, oh, what did you do for 4 years? You're like, well, I've built this and I did this. And then that helps get you a role at another company when you're eventually done with running.
I just let you give an elevator pitch for Tinman Elite.
There you go. Free marketing.
Yeah.
Thanks, HAX.
So hopefully someone will listen to this and say, that's what I want to do.
That's right. Come on out.
I kind of want to wrap up here, but beyond the team, what's next for you as a runner, dad, and person? Just give us a glimpse into what Connor Winter is up to in the next year or two.
That's a great question. As we talked about, I'm trying to be present, so I have no idea. But I think there are some things that I would love to have: a healthy child that is thriving and loving and has a dad that's there and cares about him and is not traveling the world trying to sell stuff or working a job where I'm just not home. Running, I would love to still be competing and pushing towards 2028 and have the goal of just being competitive like I was in 2024. And so I think that was such a fun experience, and I loved like doing that and feeling like I was chasing the big dreams. Have a happy marriage, like financially stable. I think that's kind of where you get to the 30s. It's no longer cute to have like $100 in the bank account and live with your grandma. So I feel like I've made steps in the right direction, learned and grown from Tinman, and then have used that for my part-time jobs. And so, whatever else. Lots of walks with my dogs and just enjoy simple things. Because I think there's so much of like the virality of what Tinman was skews your view of like what is normal. Because I think it was such a meteoric rise, and then like the letdown on top of that like is so hard, because you always compare to what it was at the best and when it was the top. And how do you accept where you are right now with dad friends and dad teammates, and like how do you become what you are right now, which is just like more present with my teammates, because I don't have to be, but because I want to be. And I want to be there when we can have play dates with the kids and like do things like that, where you kind of learn to grow and mature. And it's not just about the New Year's Eve parties that were epic and champagne on the ceiling. It's more so like, let's go hang out with the kids and go to the park and do some more wholesome stuff. So naturally, that just seems to be how life goes. And I'm excited to see how that continues to go, but still have those things that are important. Just to have, like you said, gratitude for everything.
The champagne on the ceiling has since then been painted over. So
it didn't really ever leave. It's just hidden, so you don't know where it is.
Connor, it was great sitting down chatting with you. We do this all the time, but it's nice for the world to hear your perspective. Connor's always behind the scenes, so it's nice for him to have a little voice here and talk about how he feels. Thank you, everyone. Hammer and Axe, episode 2.